And good morning, everyone, and namaste. Welcome to Hindu Lounge. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact, and Hindu Pact is the policy research and advocacy collective, an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, and today being spring forward Sunday. Here we are, an hour late compared to all the other days, and I am Ajay Shah. I'm the host of Hindu Lounge, along with, of course, Utsav Chakrabarti, who is now joining us from Bharat and Kolkata. And Utsav is the executive director of Hindu Pact. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America. We talk about contemporary American Hindu issues every week and on this Hindu Lounge. And today we have an exciting topic. And oh, by the way, Maya Durga is also joining us from India today. So welcome, Maya Durga, and welcome, Utsav. So thank you for joining us. And I should have turned this on so you guys can see us. But welcome to Hindu Lounge. As I was just saying, today we have a very exciting, interesting issue that we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about the elections that just happened in India. But everyone talks about the elections that just happened in India, right? So we are not just going to talk about the elections that happened in India. We are actually going to take it a step forward, and we are going to talk about the conference that occurred a couple of weeks ago, and it was called India on the Brink. And you know what, Utsada, welcome first of all to Hindu Lounge. And I am going to say that the elections actually stopped India from going on the brink. So, Utsada, welcome. How is India? How is Kolkata? How is, and what is Mamta Didi saying? I'm sure you had a few meetings with her. And how was your lunch and dinner with Mamta Didi?
Thank you for inviting me from India to the Hindu Lounge, and this is a new experience. It's a different time zone, so actually it's more convenient for me Ajay, than you, and because it's evening time here, it's almost 8. It's actually 8, 8:30 in the evening. So it's all good. I'm having a good time. I have not had any interaction on political terms with anybody here. I'm visiting my mother, who lives in Kolkata, and I'm having a good time. So all in all, pretty uneventful trip so far. Hopefully,
So
I'll keep it that way.
when are you meeting Mamta Didi?
I'm too small a person to
Oh,
get to
come
meet
on,
these
so
people.
that you are the executive director of Hindu Pact, and she's
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure
why I'm
she's
saying
going.
I'm too small a person to meet
No, no,
important
no. So
people.
that don't underestimate yourself. I'm sure she's looking for some Hindu votes through you. I would be very surprised if she doesn't meet you. So, don't underestimate yourself.
No, I don't underestimate myself, but I'm not that important. But this is a time when I'm having family time with my other guy and my family.
Yeah, well, okay, all right, Utsada. So, Utsada, you were there for elections, and why don't we talk about a little bit about the elections first? And I'm sure you met with Yogi ji.
Well, actually, to be honest with you, there are people in Hindu Pact, very involved people in Hindu Pact, who I'm sure have the ability to meet Yogi ji and who have had long interaction, connection with Yogi ji. So I believe that's a good thing.
But we are really not into politics. I mean, they just know probably when he was a yogi more than he was a chief minister.
Not just that, because Yogi Adityanath ji also ran a lot of charities. He also, before he became the chief minister, also ran a lot of philanthropic efforts across Uttar Pradesh that was really helping people. So a lot of people volunteered, and a lot of people knew about the work he did.
So you I know, but you're the invited state guest of the state over in India now with all the going ons over there, and you're going
No,
to
I'm actually just sitting here in Kolkata, having home cooked meal and trying to make the most of it.
All right. So let me know when when you meet with all these people. Hey, Usada, let's talk about the elections a little bit. You
Yes.
know, so the and then we can talk about the conference that took place. So that the elections were, the people thought that people called these elections the semi-finals of the national elections that will happen after 2 years, and elections happened at seemingly challenging times. These were the times when the Kisan Andolan, the farmers' march, had ended a few months ago. There were accusations that BJP didn't really do as well during the COVID crisis, and it was completely mismanaged. And there was a talk that all the opposition votes will be consolidated against BJP, and to compound that with the fact that. Really, no political party in 37 years had gotten re-elected, and no chief minister who had completed the 5-year-old term had ever been re-elected to the position of chief minister. So if you really think about it, Sudha, this is an open and shut case, right? So why even so people assumed that it's going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for BJP to win this election. And again, we are an American Hindu advocacy, and we are going to look at it from American Hindu perspective. But we need to set the stage and talk about the election in India before we start talking about the impact of that election on American Hindus or America overall. So that in that situation, not only BJP won, but won actually increased the voter share. And it won in Uttarakhand, and it won in actually in Goa. They increased the number of seats, and in Manipur they got a majority. So in Punjab they never really had much presence, so they didn't have presence. But um, so what happened? So that you were there, tell us, give us a ground report. And here is if you want to see, this is what happened over there, right?
Yeah, so it is important. The reason why we are talking about it, Ajay bhai, as you rightly said, we are an American Hindu organization, mostly focused on Hindu issues in America and globally. Uh, we did not have as much interest to talk about it. But the reason we are talking about this is because it was presented globally in the Western media, in the minds of the Western political analysts, in the minds of Western governments who are looking at different countries from a foreign policy perspective. These elections were portrayed and presented as a semi-final or a smaller game, qualifying game for the 2024 elections, which is the Lok Sabha elections. And the reason why it is important for us to understand, and it is important every time. So, I do not want to sound like 2024 is going to be the most important elections India ever had, kind of. It is important because, as you can see in the world today, the India is in the crosshairs of a lot of geopolitical entities who are not happy that India has had a stable, progressive, forward looking, efficient governance for the last 8 years. And those geopolitical forces are extremely powerful, extremely well connected, and very sinister, if I may put it from my perspective, from a perspective of a Hindu American, who don't mean well for India. So the every election that keeps India in a position, brings India in a position where it gets stronger. Every election that keeps India a united country with a positive approach towards its future helps promote India and helps the people of India. 1.4 billion people and 1.3 billion people. So that's why it's important to understand and analyze these elections from a global perspective, especially from American perspective. And you will see that the reason these elections were critical is because just around the time the election results were being declared, there were conferences being held in America with really high profile participation from a lot of these geopolitical actors, as I can put it, as I just said, who were presenting India as a country that is about to fall apart, about to fall into a genocide, and stuff like that. So, if you want to talk about that, Ajay bhai, that would be great. We can talk about the India on the Brink conference and put it in the perspective of the election.
Yeah, let's go to India on the brink in a minute, but let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit more on the elections itself. I mean, so that I found it interesting that even in so there are some myths that were propagated belong before the elections, right? And some of these myths were busted. And I want to find out from you, because you are in Bharat, so I want to find out from you why some of these myths, why these myths were propagated and why they got busted. For example, there was a myth that this is the world's largest farmers unrest that took place in India, and this farmers unrest is going to change the landscape, the political landscape in northern India. Damn squid, right? Nothing happened. Why? What? Who built that narrative, and why nothing
Because
happened? Who built
yeah,
this?
so
So tell us who built this narrative, and why nothing came out of it.
so I wouldn't say nothing came out of it. The What needs to be understood is that it was a manufactured narrative, like the narrative before that, which was CAA, like the narrative before that, which was Article 370 removal, like the narrative. So it was a series of narratives targeted at different population segments, meant to fragment the Indian population as much as it could. So any possible fault line that could be exploited in India's social and political landscape was exploited to manufacture movements. You know, almost almost trying to make something out of nothing in terms of political violence, in terms of uh, public mobilization and discontent generation. So this was one of those movements. It had enough number of people to grab Western media attention, It had enough violence to attract global media attention and portray it as a, you know, good versus evil narrative, where obviously the Hindus and the government of India was considered the evil. So it had all the ingredients of a manufactured public outrage, which is nowadays very common in that is being done by Western, many American and global NGOs working together with media organization and even state actors. So that was done. It was packaged. Many of our listeners have heard and discussed. We have discussed this before. The packaging of how these kinds of movements have been done, but it didn't work. It didn't work in most places, especially in places like Uttar Pradesh, because if it had worked in Uttar Pradesh, the BJP would not have come back to power, despite every possible historical data going against BJP. So, it didn't work in Uttar Pradesh, where a large segment of the population of the so-called protesters came from. But it did work to some extent in Punjab. If you notice, the party that came to power in Punjab, the Aam Aadmi Party, it does have strong links with the same globalist entities that are known to manufacture such outrages, not just in India but in other parts of the world. So Aam Aadmi Party's victory is to some extent an indication that a little bit of those manufactured protests have gained the support that they were intended to generate. At the same time, it needs to be noted that the political parties that lost the election in Punjab had also supported the farmers' protests. So it was not something that only Aam Aadmi Party gained from. But there is still some indication, in my understanding, to show that this entire manufactured farmers' protest and all did benefit Aam Aadmi Party a little bit. Ajay bhai, you are on mute. I cannot hear you.
So the other narrative that was built was that BJP completely mismanaged the COVID crisis, and because of the COVID crisis mismanagement and the migrants from UP who actually work in other states were not able to return and everything else, and that will have a very adverse impact on on BJP, and all the votes that BJP got in the last election, they'll not be able to get, and they'll badly lose because they badly mismanaged the crisis. Um, so that we knew from the Seva work that BHPA and other organizations have done in America, that that is actually not quite true. Any healthcare system can get overwhelmed, especially in a country with 1.5 billion people or close to it, and as the probably more the government, once the crisis unfolded, government really plunged into action and did what most governments around the world had failed to do, and provide for emergency hospital beds and respirators and all the other things, along with the non-profit organization like ours. So that, why did the COVID floating bodies in Ganga and all this narrative that was played up so heavily in New York Times and Washington Post, and uh, you know uh, uh, why did it not work?
It's a good question, Ajay. The reason it did not work is because, and by this time, most people who watch our show or who observe politics in India should realize that if anything is coming in Washington Post or New York Times, the ground reality in most occasions happens to be exactly the opposite of what they are saying. So
No,
it,
you don't believe in Washington Post and New York Times?
no, I believe them, but I
This is a warning for you. You better believe in them.
okay.
All right.
So my point is that it is quite it is sometimes quite the opposite of what's happening. And when I speak to people here, people do have a feeling that not only did the government of Uttar Pradesh manage the COVID crisis quite well, They actually did a pretty decent job in managing. You have to understand, Uttar Pradesh is one of the most populous states, not just the most populous state in India, but if it were a country, it would be one of the most populous countries in the world. In
220 million people, right?
yeah,
220
so
million people.
it would be, yeah, it would be in the top, top 10, 15 countries in the world in terms of population. So despite that, the way in which it was managed, the COVID crisis was managed in Uttar Pradesh, if you compare that with some other places like Maharashtra and Kerala, and even to some extent, Arvind Aam Aadmi Party's Delhi, people saw that there was a much better response from the Uttar Pradesh BJP government in managing the situation. And that response was primarily, and these people understood, that response was primarily because there was a efficiency in the way things were being done in Uttar Pradesh in the last 5 years. Just a general improvement of efficiency. Uh, and that people, I felt that people in Uttar Pradesh realize it. People want to give that a longer chance of success. So I believe that that was reflected in the electoral outcomes, which broke all historical records, as you pointed out right away in the beginning. That every pattern of history was broken in the results. So that's, I think, what the ground reality is. And obviously, you will never read an article in Washington Post highlighting the points I made.
And then what about the, one of the things that I noticed is that AIMIM party, which is Asaduddin Owaisi's party, who is a Muslim leader based out of Hyderabad or Bhagyanagar. Asaduddin Owaisi's party lost its deposit in almost every seat it contested. Now, the it takes you have to have at least 1/6 of the casted votes in order to get get your deposit back, because they don't want frivolous candidates to be running every time and overwhelming the system. So AIMIM, which portrays itself as the new version of Muslim League and all India Party representing Muslims, and they lost deposit in every seat it contested. Not only that, Utsada, the BJP share of Muslim votes was actually higher this year than it has been in the past years, right? And so even in Deoband, which is the seat of one of the Muslim learning centers, which makes actually Islamic law, the Deobandi school, uh, BJP won. So, what does it tell you as to what is the alignment of majority of the Muslims? And I'm going to come to this a little later, but especially the Muslim women. And I think there is an emerging trend that Muslim women are not really voting with Muslim men, because they have noticed that their welfare lies with the people who profess the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam or Ekam Sata Viprabodha principles more than people who have exclusivist ideologies.
I would be more cautious in such glowing observations, but there seems to be a trend. I mean, we shouldn't get
No,
carried away
Sada, I
with.
mean, who made the law? I mean, who propagated, who promoted equality for Muslim women, and got rid of triple talaq, which is the law where,
I
where
understand.
3 times you have to just say talaq verbally and you're divorced and thrown out on the street. Uh, no Muslim organization supported that, right? So,
Don't assume that all Muslim women supported that either. So what I'm saying there here, Ajay Bhai, is that be cautious in analyzing or getting carried away in analyzing that there has been a shift in the Muslim women vote in a significant way towards BJP. What I would still accept, and I think the data shows that to some extent, that there has been a small shift in within a segment of the Muslim women population that genuinely appreciates the efforts of the BJP to bring them equality within their communities, which is a very, often very segregated and very, grouped, almost ghettoed community. Sorry to use that word, but it's true in some extent, to some extent, in many areas of India. So that I think there is some amount of movement in the votes from the Muslim women segment. I feel very hesitant when our Hindus or Indian political analysts, go from one extreme to getting carried away to the other extreme. Like, oh my
Uh,
God, the triple talaq thing just changed the game for. It's not the case. There is a significant number of Muslim women who do not want to move out of the non-equal. Unequal society that Islam offers to them. So as and you will see that a large section of them did come out in support of wearing hijabs also in recent past. So that's a good indication that they themselves are quite diverse in their opinion. But there is one thing I wanted to add, and if I can share a screen,
Hey, Usada,
going back
before you
to.
go there, can I just ask quickly then, next time in Maharashtra elections, we cannot count on Rana Ayub's vote for the in favor of Hindus, Hindu parties? Do you
I
really,
mean,
are
Rana
you really
Rana
saying that?
Ayub.
Are you really saying that Rana Ayub, the famous Washington Post reporter who was recently been indicted for fraud, we lost her vote? She is not going to be enlightened and vote for pro-Hindu parties?
No, I don't think Rana Ayub will be even voting most likely because she will be
Uh,
applying for American citizenship soon.
oh,
Uh,
I'm so disappointed.
so if I can share the screen, I wanted to show you something that highlights the
Yes,
discord between what you read in the global Western media and what the ground realities are.
yes, please
And
go ahead.
that should be very concerning for everybody
Yeah, please
because
go
it
ahead.
points to
You can,
something very dangerous.
yeah, you can
Uh,
share the slide.
it's not a slide
Oh, yeah,
actually.
you can share anything you want. Yeah, please feel free to
Yeah.
share.
I just want to just a minute. Hi. Okay. Because it is important for us to understand this phenomenon.
Okay.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, I do.
So this is the cover page of Time magazine. Okay, and this is the March 2021 issue. Okay,
Okay.
so about a year ago. Imagine this gentleman Chandrasekhar Azad. He's a very extremely divisive character, fully propped up from foreign funding, is presented as somebody who is even far more extremist than any so-called, he is the poster boy of breaking India movement, which is so-called Dalit activist who wants India to be broken along the lines where Muslims and Dalits join hands and take India apart, breaking India narrative. He shows up on the cover page of Time magazine. Imagine
And
that.
most people have never heard of him, right?
Most people in India barely heard of him. And this guy was encouraged by all these NGOs, very similar to Arvind Kejriwal, to fight against Yogi Adityanath. So remember, in 2014 elections, Arvind Kejriwal decides to fight against Narendra Modi in Varanasi, obviously loses.
Uh,
This guy fights against Yogi Adityanath in Gorakhpur. And lo behold, he loses his deposit also. But
no.
yeah, he
After
loses his
being
deposit.
featured on Time magazine, how can you lose your deposit?
Exactly. So the
No,
reason
that
I
can't be
wanted
it. So
to,
did you double check that he didn't win? Are you sure?
yeah, he didn't win. So
You sure, right? You're sure.
yeah, you're right.
Okay. All right.
so so the point I'm trying to make here is that there is a very concerning, very discordant, and extremely dangerous effort because this time BJP won, but there will not be a time every time that they will win. There will be a time when something like Punjab will happen, where Aam Aadmi Party won and with huge majority. So there is such a concerted effort to bring these kinds of divisive, uh, almost dangerous elements into the political mainstream and make them powerful politicians. That we have to be really worried, and that's why I wanted you to see this, and that's why American Hindus should be looking at these things and should be working towards educating people in America about what the reality is versus what is being projected in the media. Because remember, it is these things that eventually become global agenda items that can change the direction of a nation in any direction, good or bad, 20 years from now. So, Hindu Americans, people like us, have to work very hard to present the proper, honest narrative that
Yeah.
is counter to the narrative being presented by mainstream media in America in a in a very concerted manner.
Hey, so the one other narrative that didn't really quite work is this caste-based politics, right? The Samajwadi Party and some of the other parties in India are apt at promoting the caste narrative, and you can see the impact of the caste narrative that is being promoted in US as well, because there are groups like Equality Labs who go around promoting caste narrative, and that dividing Hindus on the basis of caste is something that is uh, you know increasingly very blatant and increasingly shamelessly done to bring the Hindu successful Hindus down. Tell us why the caste narrative is did not work. I mean, first of all, people don't realize that the president of India, who's member of BJP, is Dalit. People don't realize that the prime minister of India, who they never stop maligning, is from the other backward class community, and yet BJP is considered to be a party of upper caste. And why is it that and so but there's a caste narrative out there. So why is the caste narrative out there, and why are the caste based parties, the mandal parties as they're called in India, the parties that made their living, uh, you know you know why are they not gaining, why are they losing the traction they had like 10 years ago?
Well, the reason the caste narrative didn't work is primarily because Modi and BJP in India over the years, especially in the last 6 years, have been able to convey the message to the people of India that caste doesn't help you. It is only a way to divide and redistribute resources. But if the resources keep shrinking, there is nothing left to redistribute. So if you keep voting for divisive and hate generating caste politicians, they are going to keep redistributing something that is getting smaller and smaller in number in terms of resources. So people of India have figured that out, at least in most parts of India, and so they have realized that instead of working for something that it's a downward spiral, even if you think about it from a selfish perspective. If there is nothing left to redistribute on the basis of caste divisions, then you still don't benefit if you are voting on the basis of caste. So people have realized that it's better to vote for somebody who is actually going to increase your ability and increase your capacity to generate resources, so that there is something to distribute, whatever agenda it is being redistributed on. And people also figured out that there is more efficiency in the way Modi and BJP has performed in terms of just providing resources to average people. So, mind you, Modi and Yogi have been they have had a very socialist approach towards things. They have been giving a lot of things to people for free, primarily because they had to do that given the situation that India is in under COVID. People in India, many people in India are so poor that if they do not have resources available to them over monthly on a monthly basis, they will starve literally. And that was a worry that was very much in the minds of Indian leadership during the COVID crisis. But I think the way Modi and Yogi and entire bureaucracy, we have to give credit to the bureaucracy as well in this situation, because we always love to blame the bureaucracy in India when things don't work. But in this case, they did a fantastic job in providing resources and providing help to the poorest of the poor, irrespective of what their identity is
Yeah.
during COVID. And I think that broke the caste narrative. And I hope that in Uttar Pradesh it continues to break, and then maybe for a generation, which is a 20-25 year period, we see people like Yogi and Modi and all these people bring that social change. The sky is the limit in that,
Yeah.
they, if the so-called proverbial Ram Rajya is not something that will be a pie in the sky. It can be literally in its, virtual glory, be made into a reality.
Let me bring it all now to back to US, right? So one of the conclusions I've reached is, and I want you to opine on this. One of the conclusions that I have reached is that, look, I mean, uh, you know, we're never going to sit here and say that there was no discrimination in the Indian society, but we also are going to sit here and say that the inherent strength of Hindu Dharma, without the colonial impositions, will overcome the social inequalities of the Indian system. And that is why the caste based politics, the caste based narrative, the caste based division of the society is not going to succeed. They did not succeed in India. The attempts to do that in UK have failed. And with a lot of work from the Hindu advocacy movement in America, that build-up of caste narrative and division of Hindus along the caste lines in America is also going to fail. The other conclusion that I have reached, and I would like you to opine on that, is that the Hindutva narrative, and you do Google search and you go to Google News and you type the word Hindutva, and almost 99% of the articles are against Hindus, where we all know that Hindutva is the tattva of Hindu Dharma, which is the essence of Hindu Dharma, and articles are blatantly anti-Hindu or Hinduphobic, and against Hindutva, which is Hinduphobic. And so I think that this Western, narrative that is being built with the help of, the people who hate Hindus, traditionally have hated Hindus, in cahoots with the Western academicians, is also going to fail. I also think that the people who are promoting the narrative that India is at the brink of breakup, or India is at the brink of a massive genocide of 200 million people, that kind of Western academic gobbledygook, supported by, again, people who passionately hate Hindus, is also going to fail. And it is going to fail because a vast majority of Hindus in India and abroad have not bought into it, and you can see that in the elections that just concluded. And it is not just the Hindi heart belt that people talk about. We are talking about states like Manipur, and we are talking about states like Goa, and Goa being a very diverse state, and yet still you see, that the people are beginning to realize that there is a bigger conspiracy to basically break our dharma bhumi, and impact not just Hindus in India but Hindus abroad as well. Your thoughts?
So I think we you can say that it will not succeed, it will fail, but there is a lot of work to be done from the Hindu community side, which I think we haven't done, and we have a long way to go in terms of ensuring that it fails, as in the breaking India, this whole balkanization, dividing India along fault lines, putting fires in places where it will expand and consume people's lives. These agenda items are not going to go away. If they anything, if you notice, it's going to keep on increasing. And the people involved in pushing these agenda items are not people who are amateurs. They are people who have done this in other parts of the world, under the garb of quote unquote color revolutions, Arab Springs, you name it. So these people they're not amateurs, they're not playing around, they're not poor, they have billions of dollars literally at their disposal, and they have smart minds with a lot of experience in burning societies at their disposal as well. So do not take it lightly and say that just because BJP wins an election here and a state election there, these things are foregone conclusions of our security and stability as a Hindu society. they will keep coming at us. They are going to continue to come at us in US as well. Uh, but the more important, and this is an important but here, Ajay bhai, that we have truth on our side. We have, uh, for those who believe, the righteousness of dharma on our side. We have to some extent a historical resilience on our side. It's very hard to for a society that has gone through so much, the Hindu society over the past 1,000 years, to really take it to that brink that fast. Uh, so what I would say is that, having understood all these strengths that we have, do not sit on your hands and think that just because BJP is doing some good things in some parts of India, your responsibility or our responsibility goes away. I would say, as Hindus in America, from where most of these agendas and propaganda and dollars are generated, it is extremely important that organizations like ours, Hindu Pact, and all the other Hindu organizations, they put their best foot forward, put immense amount of resources and support structures to expand their understanding of Hindu Dharma and the larger Hindu global outlook in American society. And I think, the united colors of holy that Ajay bhai is something that Hindu Pact and your brainchild has been working on. It's going to be in a couple of days. That is an important message platform. It does, with very limited resources, we should be able to counter the messengers of uh, these divisive forces, and they, trust me, they exist. I let me go on record to say right now that if you think that India on the Brink conference and uh, dismantle Hindutva conference and all these things are small events that bothered you, the next 4 years will be 100 times more aggressive from their side, and we will need to do 100 times more amount of work to counter them.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the India on the Brink conference, and that they, the narrative was that India is on a brink of the couple of things. Right? One was India on the brink of committing genocide of 210 million Muslims, almost 18% of Indian population now, sorry, 14% of Indian population now, and 18% in a state like Uttar Pradesh. India is at the brink of killing all those people. Now, just imagine killing 200 million people by people who have really no history of genocides entirely. In fact, people who are victims of genocide. Millions of Hindus have been killed. It has been said that the Islamic conquest of India is the bloodiest, uh, you know, conquest anywhere in the world in the history of humankind. And the narrative being promoted is akin to basically victimizing the victims. So the kind of statements that comes out, for example, Mong Zarni, a researcher at the Genocide Documentation Center in Cambodia, said, "I believe India is not only at the brink, on the brink, but is already in the process of unfolding genocide." Okay, so because there's a dehumanization that has begun and things like that. So that is what now anyone who reads Indian newspapers that are unbiased or watches Indian shows knows that this is actually not the case. But this is the narrative that is being so that is being promoted. So I'll just put this quote here for people to read. But this is the kind of garbage that is being put out. uh, Now the other person, and uh, let me talk about the other person here. Mitali Jain brought up the extent of hate speech and misinformation in India of genocidal characters, uh, very similar to what has been seen in Myanmar and in Ethiopia. And then she said, we advocate for nuanced understanding of hate speech that takes into account the kind of speech they may not technically qualify as hate speech, but still gives people the feeling of wanting to do harm offline. Remember, people who are getting bullied are Hindu kids in America, okay? Not the people who she is referring to, which are the minorities in India. And then she says, this takes the cake with Sudha. She wants Facebook to become the police. She said, we need much more experts on staff in social media companies who understand the nuances. So she wants to basically put people in at Facebook who would weed out the political content that she does not agree with. And then she says, slams Facebook for behaving arbitrarily. And she said, we have not seen Facebook taking meaningful action in removing, deplatforming some of the most egregious manifestation of hate speech by others, for example, the Hindu priests. So now she wants Facebook to actively be a censor of the views she does not agree with. I have not seen. We live in a country, Utsada, that promotes, that promotes First Amendment and freedom of speech. India also promotes freedom of speech, and here we are living in America, and we have to listen to Maithili Jain, who says uh, that we need much more experts on staff in social media companies. She wants to put staff in social media companies that will promote her political views. So why do Hindus, a lot of these companies, social media companies, are run by Hindus? Why, why are we talking? Why does Hindus and India do not have their own social media company, much like China has or Russia has? I know we believe in freedom of speech, but here there is a talk of deplatforming Hindus. What is our counter to that?
We don't have a counter to that. And mind you, you have to understand that many of these Indians or Hindus, I mean, I won't even use the word Hindus, they probably don't even feel that Hindu in their identity. So many of these Indians who run these big social media companies are just answerable to their board of directors. And given the way these Silicon Valley platforms are, for lack of a better phrase, wokifying themselves to fit into the larger narratives that they have to conform to. They these people, they are not leaders of ideas. They're just leaders of companies that have a stock market valuation. That's it. They're not ideas people. They're just managers and glorified managers. So these people you don't expect much from these people. These people don't. They're not Elon Musks of the world. They don't think outside the box. They're not innovators in terms of socio-political thinking. They're just efficient company directors,
Yeah,
and that's all you should expect from them. You should not expect anything more from them. And I think that's where we have a fault.
Yeah, so that this is the guy. So now, Adam Diang, Adma Diang, I guess is the name, who's a special advisor to the prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, said that um, you know, and it's interesting. Uh, Diang actually, does not go to any original source. Dieng goes to the press release issued by the organizers of this anti-Hindu, anti-Indian conference, anti-India conference, and says that though India had long cherished tradition of cherished history of peaceful coexistence, intolerance and discrimination on the grounds of religion and belief had increased. Based on the press release. Now, this person is an advisor to the prosecutor of International Criminal Court, so supposedly a lawyer. And a lawyer, instead of basing uh, the statement on any evidence, is basing this anti-Hindu, anti-India rhetoric based on the press release of the organizer. I mean, if that is not abdication of responsibility, what is? And then there's a person, Christopher Tuckwood, who is the executive director of Sentinel Project, a Canadian nonprofit. He says that you know preventing genocide in India would be difficult, as the state was both perpetrator and an active protector of other perpetrators. Utsada, tell me, what genocide are we talking about here? In India, even today, more Hindus are brutalized, victimized, uh, kidnapped, uh, you know, married under the wrong pretext. I was just reading this news item, Utsada, that came today, and a Christian in-laws of a mute Hindu woman who refused to convert threw her out, and she is sitting on the street, homeless. This is the condition of Hindus, where 82% of the population is Hindus, and they are talking about preventing genocide of non-Hindus who are, what is going on here? And I want to show you this, because this, Utsada, is the state of Hindus in India today. Okay, take a look at this. This is the Hindu woman in Tamil Nadu who is sitting on the street, Utsada, because she refused to convert. Okay, and here we are. What are we talking about? We are talking about genocide of non-Hindus. Take a look at it again, and give me your comments. Utsada, you may be on mute. You're on mute, Utsada.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I understand what you're saying, but you have to understand that people like Adama Deng, who you just highlighted, they are activists for hire. Uh, he used to be. I can tell you about him because I know a little bit of his background. About 10 to 12 10 years ago, I know somebody who he approached to work for and speak against against Pakistan, and asked for money in return. And that person said, "Well, we don't have money, so I'm sorry. If you want to speak against Pakistan, go ahead and speak. We can provide you information, but we don't really have money to fund your effort against Pakistan." So this gentleman, Adama Dieng, is a whatever special as advisor, prosecutor for hire. He will, he will do so if you really on this particular case. I know, Ajay, you believe that these people are driven by ideology and therefore it's not the money part. But on this particular case, I can tell you that it is a factor in these
We
persons.
don't know, because we don't really know anyone's finances, so we don't want to make any accusations of people taking money or any of that.
But in
But
this case, I know that this person had approached another person for money to speak against Pakistan. So he can come after me for that. He will
uh,
he will be exposed.
so here is a professor, Jason Stanley, a professor of philosophy at Yale University. He's an author of How Fascism Works, and he says the early thinkers of RSS made explicit suggestions that India should follow the Nazi model. And then he said that the CAA looks This is the one law in India that gives preferential immigration to people who are persecuted minorities in surrounding countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan. And he says CAA looks frighteningly like the Nuremberg laws. There is a movement to strip from Muslims the right to have rights. The map is extremely clear. Utsada, he should know that America has exactly the same law giving refuge to persecuted minorities from Europe. In fact, Democrats suggested Biden to utilize a similar preferential immigration for people who are Hindus and Sikhs who are fleeing Afghanistan when Taliban took over recently, and give them prioritized immigration. When a professor at Yale talks about CAA in terms of Nuremberg laws, it is clear that he is not using his intellect, but he is using his politics, and he is trying to leverage his position at Yale for uh, purposes that are damaging to people who are fleeing these persecution. And I could have used much stronger words, but I was very careful in not using them. Your thoughts?
Again, it is hard to say much about, because these people have the credentials but they don't have the research, and they don't have you can literally, there's something called Godwin's law, where essentially if you run out of arguments to prove somebody wrong, you just start comparing them to the Nazis and Hitler. And I think at this point of time it has become, Godwin's law has become so applicable that you literally, every side that opposes any side in America or anywhere else in the world just starts invoking the Nazi analogy. And lo behold, you are right. So I think this gentleman Jason Stanley has already lost the debate and lost the discussion and lost the validity of his position by in because he's invoking Godwin's law in his arguments, and I can just leave it at that. I mean, that's all we can say. I mean, you cannot argue with these people. Anything you say, at the end of the day, it will be all about, okay, so you are Hitler. You can see that in
That's an
modern
argument.
geopolitics.
That's a statement to all end all intellectual discourse.
Yeah. So and that you can see nowadays in other parts of the world as well. Like, everybody is in a race to prove the opponent side as a Nazi. That's how you can end any conversation and go back to fighting each other.
Yeah. Hey, so that then there is this guy, and I don't want to mispronounce his name, but it's a it is a French name, and his name is, I believe it may be Jean Damasny Gassanabo, but he's the Director General of National Research and Documentation Center on Genocide in Rwanda. So recently, it has become somewhat fashionable to compare um, Hindus uh, and no evidence at all as something similar to committing something similar to the genocide in Rwanda. So Hindus are going to commit. They're building a narrative that the uh, Hindus are like Hutus and are going to commit the kind of genocide they committed. And they said that because Hutus had the songs and Hindus have the songs that praise India and Hindus. What is this about?
Well, it's two things. Number one, nobody in the world really knows and understands enough about the Rwanda genocide. So it's a dark black hole that you can literally, blame anybody and everybody of doing. It's an easy accusation. Nobody knows what happened exactly in Rwanda. Number two, many of these French analysts, French scholars, even French military personnel, they have an inbuilt guilt about their failure. In fact, if I can put it, in fact, I would say they actually allowed the Rwanda genocide to happen because it was under their watch that it happened. So there is an inherent guilt in them about it. And so they have become easy prey of anybody who is willing to put them on a platform and want them to release their inner guilt about Rwanda by accusing somebody else of almost reaching that brink. And they become willing participants in that narrative building. I've seen that in not just amongst French, as in the French from France. I've seen that also amongst French military generals from Canada, who were also involved in Rwanda. So it's a very complex. See, that's why Ajay bhai, I keep saying this, that Hindus are quite clueless in terms of what is up, what they are up against, and the psychology and the machinations of the people they are working against, they're facing. So we have to really up our game to understand and analyze why we are facing this kind of targeted uh, disinformation, and why that is so high profile. Because these people are not just somebody from the street who's destroying a Gandhi statue. These are people who are from academic institutions with a lot of credibility, and they can make an, to an average unbiased mind, they are more likely to believe these so-called scholars than they would believe us. And that is the real danger that we face.
Yeah, really. So that we can kind of, you know, go on and on about this. There were a lot of speakers over there, but the good news here is that that conference got no traction. And somewhere, I'm sure that people who organized it and put so much effort into it. I mean, being activists ourselves, you know, my sympathies for them. That their conference failed and failed miserably. It got no traction. Nobody watched it. Nobody listened to it. And I know how much work goes into it because we have done conferences like this. And it's people work day and night to put up these kinds of conferences, get speakers lined up, and get organize the narratives that they want to present and all of that. And then it's almost I've used this uh, uh, analogy before, and I'll keep using this analogy again. It's like uh, the Schrodinger cat, right? Or in Hindi, there is a song which about Schrodinger's cat, and it says, "Jungle mein mor nacha kisne dekha." So there's a peacock who had a great dance in a jungle, and nobody came to watch. And so, total waste, right? What do you think? I feel
Well,
Usada,
Ukraine,
can I just play a music because I kind of have sympathy for them and I kind of feel bad for them.
if it's not like me saying don't play it will make any
No, so
difference. So
that I think even Maya would enjoy this kind of music. See, that's like a car crashing. That's what happened to that conference. See this one. Conference crashed. Utsada, why? Why did the conference crash?
well, don't take credit for it because it was the
I
Ukraine
know that
Russia.
I take credit for it. I'm just saying something happened, and the conference basically, you know, failed.
Correct. It's the Russia-Ukraine crisis that saved the day for this particular set of events. But don't. It's going to happen again, and it's not. They're not going to stop. They're going to keep coming at you. So that's
Utsada,
where.
is it the Russia-Ukraine crisis, or is it the, is it the, you know, is it because people just don't buy this crap?
Talk to a young American Hindu. Talk to the kids of the same people who we work with, and see how many people buy that crap. There are a lot of people who buy that crap. Okay, a lot of young American Hindus are totally getting sucked into this disinformation campaign. So yeah, so don't think that people don't buy that crap. It is crap, but there are a lot of people who buy it,
So
including young American minds who have no better information. So that's why it's important for us to educate and share our understanding, at least make the playing field even to some extent, and at least share the knowledge in terms of the truth that is available out there.
so I Utsada am eternally optimistic, and I always believe in Satyameva Jayate. The truth will always prevail at the end of the day. Let's hope so. Let's hope that the truth prevails, right? I don't know, Sudha. I remain eternally optimistic.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to be optimistic. Good to work towards the positive optimism as well. So let's do that. I know, Ajay, you work so hard to share this knowledge. My efforts to push ourselves towards working harder is not directed at people like you or me, or many of us who are trying to do this as much as we can. It's directed at the larger Hindu society in America and around the world, where we need to put more resources and more time and more of our minds into making sure that we are not targets of this kind of misinformation.
Hey, Utsada, before we go to the next segment, let me play this 1 minute video and to talk about our upcoming United Colors of Holi. Thank you for that, good discussion on the conference that took place and how I remain optimistic that the uh, Indian elections and the emerging Hindu narrative in America indicates that these kind of conferences are not going to succeed in long run. But let's go to something positive, and that is United Colors of Holi. Holi is celebration of victory of good over evil, a celebration of the victory of Bhagwan Vishnu's Narsimha avatar over all-powerful Hiranyakashipu, rescuing his devotee Prahlad, a seemingly powerless child. Holi is the test by fire and survival of Prahlad against supposedly immortal Holika based on Shraddha or faith. Holi is a victory of powerless against those who have power. Holi is empowerment by faith. Holi celebrates the advent of spring. Holi is sheer joy and exuberance to celebrate the eternal and divine love like that of Radha and Krishna. It is coming together as a community. The community becomes one. Rich and poor, old and young, throwing powder of vibrant colors at each other, painting each other's faces. All our skin colors become one. The races and ethnicities become one. That oneness is Holi. Starting 2022, we are celebrating Holi as United Colors of Holi. We'll celebrate Holi for all its historic and dharmic reasons, and we'll remind our communities, Hindus and non Hindus, that colors unite us. Colors of our skins are merely outward expressions, outward celebration of our inner selves, of the inner immortal souls. Welcome to the United Colors of Holi, an old tradition and a new beginning. United Colors of Holi coming to you in March 2022. Hey Utsada, that is the United Colors of Holi. Watch our promotion of the events that are unfolding. There are about dozens of organizations, probably close to 100 organizations that have signed on to the partners with United Colors of Holi, and we welcome you to join United Colors of Holi. There are a lot of activities that are going to happen under that banner, including an in-person live celebration taking place in Chicago. But that is not the only one. Our partner organizations are also doing a lot of events, and I welcome all of you to join United Colors of Holi. Usada, if you don't mind, if you can just share the PowerPoint you have, because that is that is the one where I have the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week. While you bring it up, I'm going to play our normal, usual graphics. If you can reload that PowerPoint, that would be good because there are a lot of things there. But let me play this first. Our usual graphic song that we play before Hindu Seva Act of the Week.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं लोकहितं.
Hey, Utsada, if you cannot get that, are you able to load it? You're on mute. All right. So let me present the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week. And this time, instead of last week we had featured three organizations: Seva International, BAPS, ISKCON, all of them working to help people in Ukraine. Today, we are adding to that list and we are adding Art of Living, the organization founded by Sri Ravi Shankar, and to the list of organizations. And all of these people are helping people either who are in Ukraine or who have left Ukraine and have gone to Poland. They've opened up their centers and they are helping the refugees. They're helping the people who are, who are rendered homeless, people who are sitting in the bomb shelters, and all of these people are being helped by Hindu organizations. And we want to not just thank them, but we want to encourage you to go to their websites, to Seva International website, to BAPS website, to ISKCON website, the Hare Krishna movement website, or the Art of Living website, and help these organizations, help the people of Ukraine. I think that is something. I think that's a noble act, and we urge you to do the best you can to help these people over there. So with that, let me go to the other segment, our regularly scheduled segment of the Hindu good news of the week. And Utsada, we really have a great news for this week. And Utsada, the Hindu good news of the week is Allahabad High Court has restored the plea for handover of Mathura's Shahi Masjid Mosque to Hindus. This is significant. So that this is significant because the three of the holiest mandirs of Hindu Dharma, Sri Ram Janmabhoomi, a place where Sri Ram was born, Krishna Janmabhoomi, a place where in Mathura where Sri Krishna was born, and Kashi Vishwanath, one of the most significant Shiva mandir, were all at one point or the other in our history were converted to mosques. And Hindus have been struggling to reclaim these places of worship for past hundreds of years. And this has now become illegal. And Somnath being the fourth one, which is already now reclaimed right after the Indian independence. So it's a long legal process that has started decades ago to reclaim the Krishna Janmabhoomi Mandir, and you can see the mosque being is built right on top of the mandir. There's remnants of mandir still there on the same compound. Mathura High Court, Allahabad High Court rather, has said that this particular mosque, which is built illegitimately over Krishna Janmabhoomi, should be handed over to Hindus. This news item came out just yesterday. Now, I'm sure there's a lengthy legal process that will ensue, and that's fine, but that's where we are today. Any thoughts?
I think let's follow the legal process. You know, there is no doubt that this needs to be restored, like hundreds of other important mandirs across South Asia that
Thousands,
need
thousands.
thousands, yes, that need to be restored. But it's the step in the right direction. Hopefully, this will be done in a manner where politics will not be play an important role. This would be the rightful return of goodwill and positivity that India deserves and that Hindus deserve.
Absolutely. And then look, I mean,
The
statues of
problem comes
slavery
when
and
political
all.
parties make this into a vote catching mechanism, and then you'll have the Congress or somebody else, so-called secular parties, jump in, and with nowadays with so much foreign intervention going on, it has the potential to turn violent. So we have to make sure that it's returned without violence, and I think that template is a good template to follow for the future. That way thousands of these kinds of dilapidated symbols of colonialism can be restored back to their indigenous owners and the Hindus without any violence.
And also if the
There
statues of
should be
slavery.
something, I would suggest there should be something like a reconciliation decade of reconciliation, where all these colonial buildings that Islamist conquerors had imposed on the people of the Indian subcontinent are returned back over a decade, and Hindu temples built along the way.
Yeah. So the if the the way I look at it, if if the statues of the slave owners can be can be destroyed, then why not this, right? So now we go
Correct.
to go ahead.
No, you're right, and I mean, I just think it needs to be done as peacefully as possible, as legally as possible. Uh, it's going to
Absolutely.
bring happiness to everybody.
I think so. I think this is the right thing to do, and I think we are all the humanity will be better off for it, because this is the kind of reconciliation that will eventually help help restore faith and peace and everything else. I think this is absolutely the
By
need
the way,
of the
Ajay,
hour.
I would go ahead and delete the quotes that you gave from these professors in the chat, because now they show up on our Facebook and YouTube.
And we are
And to
promoting
somebody
them.
who is actually not watching our show and just reading the comments, would actually think that we agree with these people. So I would suggest that it was not a
All
good
right.
idea to put them in the
So
comments.
that let me go to your favorite topic, the Hindu phobe of the week, and tell us who is the Hindu phobe of the week. I should have played a music. So should I play a music for that, Utsoda,
No,
or
no,
you
no,
just
don't
want
have to.
to, or
Don't
you
play
just want
music.
to talk about it?
Yeah, yeah, don't play music.
No,
Just
no
I
music. Come
No
on.
music. So
I
the reason I okay, play music if it
All right.
makes you
No,
happy.
no. Go ahead. Yeah. I Utsoda, I go for it. Go for it. Without music, here is the Hindu phobe of the week, brought to you by Utsoda.
No, I just wanted to highlight this is a gentleman, Siddharth Varatharajan, very well recognized uh, media, I would say a high profile media person from India, he lives in America, most likely, I think he's an American citizen, I'm not sure. Uh, Very well funded by globalists like
Let's not talk about funding. Let's talk about everything other than funding. We
I
don't
mean,
care where he
he,
gets
he
money
runs,
from.
he owns Wire.in, he runs Wire.in, has a lot of disinformation funding coming in, has had a profile of targeting any Indians, and he made this outrageous tweet about the Godhra train burning, where around 60 car sevaks, 60 Hindus, mostly women and children, were burnt alive in a train in Godhra that sparked the so-called Gujarat riots. Uh, but it's tragic that somebody like Siddharth Varatharajan, who is a journalist, promotes this kind of disinformation, and kind of really alludes to the fact that there was no foul play and the train was not burnt, and somehow the Hindus just managed to explode into an inferno on their own.
Didn't the inquiry commission and the courts and everyone said that there was?
See, the excuse this guy gives is that is in the details. He's like, well, they didn't pour 60 liters of petrol, they might have poured some lesser amount. So he kind of, after he made this hateful tweet on the anniversary 20th year of commemoration of the tragedy, Godhra burning, he when he was exposed and people called him out that this is outright hate that you're promoting against Hindus, and he said, oh well, the commissions did not give the exact details of how it burned. So he kind of took to details and then kind of wriggled out of it without apologizing. And that's why I choose Siddharth Varatharajan as the Hindu hater of the week, because he really is coming at it from a position of vileness and extreme insensitivity, because had imagine, these are women and children, and they didn't do anything, they were just victims of a crime that was a larger agenda of a
Yeah. So I have
dangerous
a question for
organization.
you. I have a question
Yeah.
for you. How different is this to someone who is a Holocaust denier? So can we just put Siddharth Vadrajan as in the same category as a Holocaust denier? because here is a Hindu killing, murder, a mass murder of 69 people, and he denies it. I would call this Utsada nothing but a Hindu version of uh, a killing denier. I don't want to trivialize the word Holocaust because 6 million people died, but in essence, these are the people who are the deniers of killing of innocent people.
Yeah, and the whole point here is that he chooses the day, the 20th year when this happened, to kind of peddle his agenda. And wire.in, now everybody knows what wire.in does and where it gets its encouragement and information from. So Siddharth Vardarajan needs to be called out for this.
Absolutely. So that is the show for today. But before we go, so thank you very much for doing this from India. I know it takes a lot of time and a lot of commitment. You're on vacation, and you still took your time and time from your vacation, and you joined and you did this show. I think we had a lot of fun. I think it was great. So thank you for doing this. But before we go, we have special music created by Decibel for just this episode of Hindu Lounge. And please do listen to this as we turn our videos off and put our title slide back up. And we will play Decibel's special tune created for just this episode of the Hindu Lounge. So, any final words before we go?
No, no final words. I just,
Uh,
I'm a little slow on our activities since I'm away, but
uh,
I'm gonna come back more energized and more thoughtful, hopefully.
and we'll be back next week. So that please do give my regards to Mamta Didi
No,
if
no,
you
I'll
see
be
her.
back to the United States in April, but I'll be back on the show next week.
Yes. Oh, Sada, please don't forget to give my regards to Mamta Didi when you see her. When you go for a special dinner with her, please, uh, tell her about Hindu Pact and how what activities are, and we'll talk about, and we'll invite her to this, and do invite her to our show next week, and we can talk about atrocities of Hindus in West Bengal, and maybe get her views on it. So please do not forget to invite Mamta Didi to the next week's Hindu Lounge.
Absolutely.
And
Your
if
wish.
can't get her,
Your
let's
wish.
at least get her nephew.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Thoda. And namaste,
Okay.
everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, where we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. Please join us again next week with Utsav Chakrabarti, who is the Executive Director of Hindu Pact. I'm Ajay Shah, and I'm President of the Council of America, or VHPA. And we will see you next week. Please stay tuned and listen to a great tune created by our friends at Decibel for just this show of Hindu Lounge. With that, here is the tune brought to you by Decibel.